So I'm Kristie Anders. I am the Program Operations Director here at Aspire. That's the Center for Continuing Education at Loyola University, Maryland. That's a lot of words to say, which is why we kind of brand named ourselves Aspire. And I have with me Lisa Hux today. She's our marketing manager, and she's going to kind of be running some tech for us. I'm going to have the chat open, so feel free if you have questions or thoughts. Feel free to put something in the chat, and she and I will try to keep an eye on that. We would love to have whatever interaction you're willing to give today. I do know that for some of us, not all of us, this is kind of a lunchtime thing. So if you're eating, feel free to just, listen in. But yeah, we would love to kind of hear from you. We will have a couple of moments where I'm going to ask some questions and ask you to respond to things in the chat, or we'll have some polls up on the screen. So if you're interested in saying something and unmuting, that's great. But also if you want to keep your video off, that's totally fine too. We would love to interact with you through the chat and the polls that we have. So again, welcome. I'm really excited to hopefully have a good conversation and time with you all today. Really glad that you were able to come. So here is our presentation, Keep Learning, the Changing Skill Landscape. Now, I know it is absolutely no surprise to any of you that our world is changing dramatically, very quickly, at not an alarming rate, but at the same time, an unprecedented rate. So this is a graph that kind of represents some ideas. This is not a take this graph to the bank kind of graph and hold me to any statistics. But what you see in this kind of dark green line is that we can continue to expect skills to absolutely exponentially grow. The number of skills that are out there as technology changes, as we diversify the different things, software that we have, tools that we have, skills are only going to continue to grow. And as humans, we have a capacity for how many skills we can learn and retain over time. Now, some of the plateaus, and again, this is not an exact science graph, but we do know that, again, we can only hold so much at one time. And so as we continue to get older, we continue to learn, but we also continue to deepen the skills that we know. And so some of this plateau that you might see is that you might be going deeper into one skill, and then as you don't use a certain skill, those skills may fall off over time. But again, we know the basic here is we as humans, we're not going to be able to keep up. We would love to be able to keep up with all of these different skills, but it's just not realistic for us. And so here's as we think about these changing skills, we know that the skill sets that are required for jobs are also drastically changing. As we increase the number of skills that are out there, what we need to be successful in our jobs also changes. And so LinkedIn did this kind of learning report where they looked at the skills that are in typical jobs, and some of this is an evaluation of the actual requirements or skills that are listed in job postings. And they looked at this in 2015 and they said, here's all of the skills. And then in 2023, they looked at it again and they said 25% of the skills that are needed in a typical job are brand new. These are skills that didn't even exist in 2015. And then they look forward to 2027 and they predicted that that's going to double. So we're going to see about 50% of the skills in a typical job in 2027 is the prediction that didn't even exist in 2015. Which I don't know about you all, that sounds crazy to me. That we are changing and evolving at such a rapid pace. So if you're willing, with this kind of in mind, I'd love for you to drop in our chat, what is a skill that you have learned in the last 10 years or so? So this initial graph starts at 2015. So thinking about everything that you have learned over the past 10 or so years, if you could put in the chat for us any kind of skill, you could even, doesn't have to be a work-related skill. If you learned how to make a really good souffle, I'd love to know that. If you have learned how to do data entry, good, advanced Excel, that is definitely something that Excel is becoming very, very key. AI chat prompts, oh my goodness, prompt engineering is a whole different thing, right? That is going to be such an essential skill for a lot of us ongoing. Yep, using AI. Again, Excel, starting to learn how corporate AI, community engagement, totally. Yeah, these are great. Thank you all. Database administration, awesome, awesome. So as you guys, I'm sure know, we're going to continue this journey of learning, and these skills that we have are going to continue to evolve. So what did the past look like for skills? Now, and when I say past, right, we're going to stick with like the past, but the very, very recent past. So what were the top skills in 2015? So again, this is about, just 10 or so years ago. I'm not going to read this whole list to you, but you can look at the kinds of skills that were identified as being important in 2015. And then we have another skill list from 2020. So this is from the World Economic Forum. And you'll notice that these lists for us, they do have some notation. So, number 6, quality control, you'll notice it's not on the 2020 list, neither is active listening, but there was 2 new skills that were added for 2020 according to this list, and then a couple of things kind of got shuffled around. But I mean, these I think we would anticipate that nothing on either of these lists would shock us. So what does today look like? So Forbes released most in-demand skills for 2024, and we're at the end of 2024. And so it would definitely be interesting to look at, how these skills, even within this last year, have changed. But I don't know that this list is very shocking either. Generative AI, a lot of you just mentioned that's a huge thing that you're learning about, is using AI for your writing, for database, for processing large amounts of information. And then sustainability, we know that is a skill that is definitely on the rise as we as people are looking to how do we continue on the trajectory that we're going for work as humans and our lives in general, in a more sustainable way, in a way that honors our environment, the people around us, the work that we do, and all of those things. So again, I don't think anything on this list is shocking to any of us. I personally think it's interesting that a lot of these seem very generalized, and the number 5 really seems to drill into something very, very specific. And so I was a little bit surprised to see clinical healthcare skills. We know healthcare is a huge sector and requires a lot of skills, but that one did seem to kind of stand out to me at least. So then what does the future look like? So this is, again, very, very near future because we can only predict things out so far. But according to Forbes in 2025, here's the top 5 skills. Again, we've got AI up there, and we're gonna dive into these lists a little bit more in a couple of slides. But I think it's interesting when you contrast 1, AI fluency, and 5, emotional intelligence, the human edge. And so we're definitely seeing, as we talk about skills, we're starting to see this differentiation between the technical and the technology different skills, but then also what are those human skills that we need? And we're starting to actually use those words. So World Economic Forum also came out with a list for the top skills in 2025. And here is their list. Again, I won't I won't read the whole thing to you, but it's these lists are starting to have a little bit of a different flavor. They're starting, you can see that, again, a lot is changing. Some of these were items that showed up on our 2015 and 2020 lists. But these skills are starting to have a little bit of a different focus. So with all of this in mind, one of the things that we've done here at Aspire, at our Center for Continuing Education at Loyola University, Maryland, is we've started to try to come up with a little bit of a different framework to think about skills. And so we've come up with this tree analogy. So go with me here through this tree analogy. I'm going to actually start at the bottom of this image, these mindset skills or the roots. And so mindset skills are things that deal with your ability to think and process. So resiliency, grit, your capacity to learn, having a growth mindset, critical thinking, problem solving, all of those kinds of things. And these help provide the foundation for your ability to function and continually learn, and also learn from others, but also learn from your own mistakes. So these kinds of skills allow you to think properly and accurately about yourself, but also increase your confidence. And then if you have a gap in this area, this could look like, and we have a white paper on our website that kind of talks about these gaps, but it has this cute little image of this tree with these little shallow or tiny roots, because when you have gaps in these different skill groups, you can feel that. And so this could look like You give up easily when you're faced with challenges. You have a lower self-confidence, and it's harder for you to believe in yourself. You might be more likely to dwell on your mistakes and your failures. You might be less likely to seek feedback or help from others. So this is kind of one category of skill are these mindset skills. And they help really provide that foundation and kind of help feed into the other skills that you can learn. The next chunk is interpersonal skills, which is kind of the trunk. So these are soft skills that help you connect with others. Communication, body language, teamwork, empathy, conflict resolution. And when you think about these interpersonal skills as your trunk, when you think about a forest as a whole, and the way that we kind of extend this analogy, is that if you have a short or a small trunk, it really inhibits your ability to connect with all of the rest of the trees in the forest. If you have some kind of stunted trunk growth, you're not able to have that connection point. And so when we think about interpersonal skills, it's really those things that allow you to connect with other people. And so if you have a gap in these interpersonal skills, this could look like difficulty communicating your ideas or even your needs to other people. You could have a difficulty effectively working with teams on projects. You might have a hard time resolving conflict peacefully. You might have a hard time being productive when you're working with others, and you might not be able to give or receive feedback very well. So that's kind of the second bucket that these first two are probably typically identified as soft skills, but you'll see in a little bit why we've kind of teased these two out from each other. The third category is technical skills. So these are the leaves and the fruit. They're the product of having really strong mindset and really strong interpersonal skills, being able to be resilient and learn quickly, but also to be able to have that connection point with others. And these are things like design, research, coding, software development, data analysis, what we typically think of when we think of technical skills. So if you have a gap in these technical skills, you may have a hard time finding jobs, getting interviews, being passed over for promotions. You might have a hard time just keeping up with the demands of your job, doing your job well or to the level that you're expected to do it. And you also have a higher potential for mistakes that could cost your company money. It could cost you part of your reputation. It could also cost you your confidence, which would loop back into your mindset. And so these are kind of our three different categories that we've identified kind of in our skills framework. So we're going to have a poll come up, and I would love to know, thinking about these three kind of groupings of skills, technical skills, interpersonal, and mindset skills, we would love for you to identify which of these three categories do you feel like most of your strengths are in. Maybe you feel like you have really great technical skills, or you're very good interpersonally, or you feel like you have really strong mindset skills. And you know, again, we're hoping that we're all balanced, but we do know that different people bring different strengths. And so which of these three categories do you think most of your strengths would lie in? So we'll give just a second for people to continue to answer that. Wonderful. And then and feel free again, if you have any questions or anything that's coming up, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. Again, Lisa, my partner in crime here, and I are going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have anything, awesome. We can go ahead and share these results. And awesome. So yeah, a lot of you identified interpersonal. And I do think that, again, all of these are crucial, but we definitely know that as as the way that we connect with others continues to change through technology, it's important to keep those skills and to hold those as strengths, and continue to work on those. Thank you so much for answering that. So with these three groups, what we're going to do next is we're going to actually look back at those lists that that we had looked at before, but I've now color coded them so that we can see where each of these skills fall as far as these three categories. So the leaves or the technical skills are kind of in that reddish color. The trunk or interpersonal skills are in that kind of limey green, and then the mindset skills are in the gold. So we can see now in the 2015 list and these 2020 list. I mean, I can draw conclusions, but again, feel free to drop in the chat if you see something that is very interesting, or if you kind of want to call it out for the sake of everyone on the call. Um, Between these two lists, we have one technical skill, which I mean, I think is very interesting. And some of these you might argue kind of fall into multiple. Negotiation is very much an interpersonal skill, but I think it has there's definitely models that you can teach and you can learn about negotiation. And so, like you could argue, I wouldn't put up a fight if you said you thought it should also be a technical skill. But it's definitely interesting looking at the mix and then jumping to the 2020, we have a really, our top three are now mindset skills. Now, if we look at the list from what Forbes released for 2024, you'll notice a lot of technical skills. And in this particular list, no mindset skills. And I don't think that this means at all that mindset skills aren't important for 2024, but I do think it's interesting to look at how people are identifying the skills that are important. And I might even say with the leaning that Forbes has, it may look more toward technical skills. But when we look at what Forbes has identified for 2025, and we look at the spread of these skills, again, number one, AI fluency. I kind of dual coded number two because digital transformation definitely has a lot of technical components, but leadership is very much an interpersonal thing. But those bottom three, and we're going to come back to this number three, perpetual learning agility. We have in the top five of Forbes list for 2025, three mindset skills. And if we look at the World Economic Forum list with this color coding, the top six are mindset. And the technical skills don't come in until the very bottom, technology and design and programming. And then, of course, I also want to call out then number two, active learning and learning strategies. Whoops, sorry about that. And so in the chat, um, is there anything that like what are you noticing? Is there anything that you think is missing or anything from these lists? And maybe I'll do a quick little flip through to kind of look back at some of these. Anything that from the today or these two kind of looking to 2025 lists, is there anything that you feel like is missing from these lists that is just a huge skill that should have been included maybe, or maybe it's specific to your industry or it's specific to your job? Is there anything that you feel like is missing? And go ahead and just put that in the chat if you would. So I'll kind of go back again to this 2024 list, and then we'll look again at these two lists from 2025. Anything that you think might be missing from these lists that maybe you think might be overlooked, or again, it's just really important. Yeah, an open mind to diversity and inclusive mindset, definitely. That is interesting because I think, like you said, that is a mindset. It is something that, it's a way that we need to be thinking. And so I think as a mindset skill, that openness, that willingness, or that ability to prioritize that as well, I think is really important. Interesting, Brad. Yeah, technical skills, they can be because technology is changing so fast. And I think that you just kind of hit the point I'm getting at here. Because technology is changing so fast, and mindset, our interpersonal skills are becoming more and more important because as soon as you learn one of those technical skills, it will change. There's just because our things are changing exponentially. We have to be able to keep up. And so being able to interact with others and these two, so I'm going to come to our next slide. We're going to look back at kind of this graph. But so what does it look like to keep up? Again, perpetual learning agility and this active learning and learning strategies. This perpetual learning agility is number three on the Forbes list, and the active learning and learning strategies is number two on World Economic Forum list. Just the ability to keep learning is one of the top skills going forward. not even what you're learning, but the ability to identify and say, I need to be learning. How do I go about doing that learning is critical for us moving forward. And I appreciate that we have, someone that is from the Montessori context on the call, because I think that's one of the things that Montessorians are very cognizant of is how do we continue, how do we scaffold and guide a student's learning, but then also how do we continue to help our students, how do we make them learners long term? How do we guide and shape them to be long-term learners? And so I really appreciate that about the Montessori perspective. So lots of great things here. And so how do we move forward then with this idea that learning itself is such an important skill? So I'm going to take us just a little bit of step back to who we are. Again, we're a continuing education center. So what is the role of continuing education in all of this? Well, first of all, what is continuing education? It's basically all the non-traditional learning that adults need to do. Not that, we don't touch high schoolers sometimes, but continuing education is really focused on what needs to happen outside of the traditional degree classroom. Now, there is some overlap there, but I'm not going to get into all of those models today. But what I did was I kind of started to think about what is education and what is training? What's the difference? How do these things overlap? And there are so many words that can be synonymous with continuing education. So I did some research myself and I kind of plotted all of these out on this continuum. So we have education, which is more formalized. It has a very long history. And then we have training, which is, I think, equally as important, but it has kind of a different intention, or it tends to be a little bit more focused on the here and now and actual skill development, while education historically has been a little bit more about your personhood development. And so then I took some of these words that we sometimes use to also mean continuing education, and I plotted them out and gave them this really nice, I can't think of a gradient, there we go, for colors, on how related they are to education or training. And so you can kind of look at this, and again, this is not scientific. I didn't come up with some really nice algorithm that searched the internet and told me exactly the weightiness of each of these and the context they were used in. But as I looked up different definitions and how people were using these words, the thing about continuing education is that it bridges both of these worlds so nicely because it has the backing of education and universities and the accreditation and the long-standing history of this, but also has the flexibility. It has the credentialing to go along with training. It's a very nice bridge into both of these worlds. And so continuing education really refers to any of these learning opportunities or educational programs that are designed for individuals beyond traditional schooling. And so it does have this bridge of ongoing skill acquisition. It empowers individuals to stay relevant, adaptable, and informed in this ever-evolving world. And so here's just some of the benefits of continuing education. So I'm not going to necessarily read all of these, but you can tell it helps you as an individual. It continues to form and shape you. It does help you in this, how do I just keep learning? If learning is such a crucial skill for us, how do we continue to pursue that? And it has, obviously career benefits as well. So one of the things that also, as we think about skills and we think about how we get them and why we might need them, we also talk a little bit about, well, how do we know once we have them? What is the validation? How do we prove to other people that we have them? Particularly in an age where you can replicate a lot of these skills or tasks with AI. And so what does that look like for us to talk about? What's the validation so that we know if we actually have a skill or not, and then we want to prove that to other people. So we have skills that kind of, or credentialing that fall in these two different buckets. On the left, we have ones that are formally maintained by external bodies, accreditation boards, government organizations, external industry agencies. And so again, these colors match up with the previous slide where we've got kind of education in green and then, training or kind of a not education in gold. And so we have a degree and then we have academic certificates that can be issued by higher education or colleges and universities, at least here in the US. And I think, at least from what people put in the chat, most of us are US based. Um, and then we have certifications and we have licensing that is still issued by some kind of formalized body, but it's not issued by higher education. And there's overlap. We have scenarios where, in nursing, you can get a degree in nursing, but you also have to pass a test in order to get your license or your certification in nursing. And so there are times when there's different kind of requirements to have like that go hand in hand in order to get these. But then on the other side, we have these informal or these kind of this form of credentialing that's not as strictly maintained. And that could be, micro-credential, badging, a certificate of completion. It could generally just be a certificate. And there's pros and cons to both of these. Again, with the formalized items, you have very strict standards. You should know pretty much what you're getting. However, it generally takes a lot of effort to get to one of these items. It's a lot more time. It's usually a lot more money. And in order to get some kind of certifications, license, degree, it's just a lot more. And the great thing about these kind of informal credentials is that they can be issued incrementally for individual or a smaller subset of skills and can offer some level of proof for these skills or validity as you go, and they can be stacked and they can be grouped, and you really have a lot more flexibility with these. But that also being said, sometimes there's a little bit of hesitancy into accepting some of these credentials because they don't have the same level of maintenance or formalization as some of these other ones. And so there's definitely a place for both of these. And I think as we continue and we are getting better ways to validate some of these skills, these informal credentials are on the rise, partially because we know we have to start breaking down the skills that are needed, again, because they're changing so quickly. So what we want to do right now is we're going to launch another poll, and I'd love for you to kind of think about, in your context, these informal credentials. We're going to focus on these for a minute. These informal credentials, microcreds, badges, certificates, are these accepted as valid forms of credentials in your industry or organization? Maybe you are an HR person, or you do a lot of hiring and you see a lot of resumes, or when you're checking out candidates, you go to LinkedIn and you see, what their alternative credentials are. Are these things that are valid and very valuable to your industry or your organization? Or is your organization or industry one that's like, you got to have a degree? We would love for you to have additional skills, but we really need kind of those formalized credentials more. So thank you, those of you that have answered so far. So this is kind of one of those Likert scales. Tell us, do you strongly agree that your industry or organization accepts these informal credentials? All the way down to strongly disagree. Again, that we gave you the spectrum for the reason. So awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. So that's interesting. We can share these results in just a minute. We'll give a little bit longer maybe. And I mean, this is heartening. So Lisa, if you can go ahead and share those out with people. We definitely, I'm glad that no one put disagree or strongly disagree. Um, because I do think that, again, these credentials, they're helpful. They're incredibly beneficial for learners who are doing their learning incrementally. So I see some of you said neutral. It might not help you. It's not going to be a bad thing, because if you're learning, you're learning. But at the same time, it might not be as valuable for your organization. Um, Awesome. So we're going to look then at kind of a refresh of these three categories. So here's some of the technical skills, some of the interpersonal skills, some of the mindset skills. This is just kind of again, a list to kind of get you thinking, because what we're going to look at next is, so let's say we know that we have a gap, or we have an area that we want to focus in for skill development. So we know we want to be learning, and we think, okay, I want to improve my mindset skills, or I really want to improve my interpersonal skills or my technical skills. What's the best way to go about doing that? So what we have here, we've kind of broken out some of these different learning options. So we have some asynchronous online learning. And here at Aspire, these are kind of the buckets that we have with individual courses, self-paced, on-demand, individual skill courses. These are great if you need a quick refresh, or if you know that, you have a skill that you need for your job, or you need for your work, and you need to get it quickly. These are really helpful. They're very flexible in the timing. They can help if you have, a very busy schedule. They're priced, I think, very, very affordable. And so this allows you to say, okay, how do I just keep on going? How do I keep on learning? Maybe there's a new skill that's coming out and you just want to focus on, building a database in Excel, or you just want to focus on prompt engineering. And so this helps you to kind of say, what do I need in the moment? What do I need to continue to be competitive in my job or in my industry? But then there's also certificate programs where some of these individual skills are grouped together, and they have a little bit of a wider focus, but also it gives you still a very specific or focused program that you can pursue. And then also we have industry certifications. So these are programs, these are educational programs that prepare you to take an exam, or some kind of test, or create a portfolio so that you can successfully get a certification. Some of these also require other steps, like our EKG technician. You have to do the educational program, but then you also have to do 10 EKGs on live individuals in order to get that certification. And so there is an element of, you still have to get out there and prove that you can do what you're learning about. But the flexibility of the asynchronous online learning, it allows you so much more options as you're trying to fit in your learning maybe to the life that's already incredibly busy that you have. So then there's also synchronous learning. These could be virtual, like we all are right now, or it could be in person. And so for us as Aspire, we've identified some kind of core ways that we do this. One of it's coaching. This is a big one that has really, I think, risen to the top of at least what we've noticed that organizations and individuals need, whether this is individual coaching or team coaching. The way that we orient to coaching is, it's not mentoring, it's not counseling, but it really is, we believe that you have what you need. You have the tools, you have goals, you have values inside of you. And so coaching really helps to come along and put some of those pieces together and help process through, how do you reach your goals? How do you use your values in your everyday life? What is the plan that you want to make, and how does someone hold you accountable to that? Um, and so then we have coaching, we have workshops, and these could be 1 hour, it could be 3 hours, it could be focused on really, one specific topic with very, interactive pieces. You've got a whiteboard, you've got poster paper, and you're in groups, or it could be something virtual like this. And then we also have cohort programs. So we know that sometimes you need a cohort, you need a community of people who are going through that learning together. You need to be able to process with other people. You need to be able to practice some of the skills that you're doing. You need you need people who have different contexts than you to be able to talk through how some of these things apply in multiple different areas. So we have another Zoom poll that we're going to be putting up, and this one is, which of these learning options have you experienced? You don't have to like them or not like them, but which ones have you experienced? Have you ever taken an asynchronous training course online? Have you taken an online certificate program where maybe there's multiple different components? Have you done an industry certification? Have you had coaching, individual, team? Could be virtual, could be in person. Have you been to a workshop? You're here now, so I hope you answer that one. Or have you been part of a cohort program? And so this just helps us kind of get an idea of which of these things have you all even experienced. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for answering this. And again, if you have any questions or any comments as we're going through this, we'll have some time for some discussion at the end. If you do want to ask something, but again, feel free to drop something in the chat. If you have something while we're going, and awesome, yeah. Wonderful. So we'll put these results up in just a second so you all can see what you have experienced. And this is a really good, it's a really good spread of different different kinds of learning options. And so while those of you that have answered, or while we're waiting for the last couple people to answer this, um, if you have a favorite, if you have something that was just amazing, if you have a cohort program or a certificate or coaching, or maybe you just want to drop in the chat, what was your favorite? If you experienced something, coaching was the best. Thank you, Priscilla. I had some coaching myself and it was amazing. If you have one of these that you absolutely loved, we'd love to hear that. Oh, cohort programs and coaching. Yes, we love our cohort programs and we love our coaching. Wonderful. So yeah, as we're looking at kind of the responses to these, if you have something, one of these options that you've absolutely loved, we'd love for you to put that in the chat. Ooh, Brad, man, you keep knowing what I'm thinking because it does depend on the skill that you're learning. And that's where we're actually going to go next. So as we think about the different skills that we can learn, and as we think about the different ways that we can learn, we might pursue and we might want to match these very differently. So what we're going to look at next is, well, what options fit best with what skills? Ooh, an Excel certificate. Yes, that's good. I'm looking back here at the chat. Um, Awesome. So what options fit with what skills? Because you should go about processing that the goal that you have, the skill that you're trying to learn might be better learned in different ways. And so one of the things that we have kind of identified is that, again, learning is good. And I don't want to say all learning is good learning. I might have to chew on that statement a little bit more before I put that out there to the whole world. But we know that learning is valuable. And again, just in the process of learning, you are exercising and practicing one of the most important skills for us moving forward. But not all learning is should we approach in the same way. And so we have identified that when you're looking at technical skills, one of the absolute best ways that you can do that is by some of these online asynchronous programs. The way that the content is structured, where you have some kind of teaching or learning content, videos, simulations, examples, you're asked to do some kind of mini assignment that you get immediate feedback. This is some of the best way to learn a technical skill. You can learn a technical skill in maybe like a workshop scenario, but it's really hard to do an Excel database workshop. It's just tricky because you probably have 12 different people on their computers, or you're all trying to watch a screen, and it just gets kind of complicated and it's not very efficient. And so when you're learning technical skills, one of the best ways at this point with the technology that we have available, and again, it depends on the level of technical skill, but technical skills are great to learn through online and asynchronous kind of self-paced training. Not to say you can't learn technical skills through coaching or workshops. It's possible, but it's probably not the best. Now, when we look at interpersonal skills, again, you can learn a foundation of interpersonal skills through online courses. But interpersonal skills are going to best be learned in community with others, because that's kind of the basis of the skill in the first place. And so we have that number one ranking there for interpersonal skills with our workshop sessions or our cohort programs, because you're learning about the skill and you're getting opportunity to practice that in real time. And one of the things that we do know about learning is that when you are learning and you have opportunity to practice immediately, that's going to help you have some of the best retention. And so, again, you can learn interpersonal skills through coaching. Fabulous way to do that as well. But we're thinking about, how do we go about learning the skills that we want to learn? Mindset skills, you can learn some of those through asynchronous training. You might not, unless like your computer crashes in the middle and you really have to show some resilience, you might not be able to practice those mindset skills right away. Coaching is an amazing way to practice mindset skills. It's an amazing way to process through with someone what you're going through, what your goals are, how you want to reach your goals, and get some really powerful questions asked that help you think through, okay, how do I want to show up? What is the kind of person that I want to be? And how do I continue to form and shape that through the experiences that I have? And then mindset skills, also great for workshops and a cohort program kind of scenario. So if you're an individual and you're going, okay, I want to keep learning. I also know that I want to focus in, maybe in 2025, you say, I want to focus on mindset skills because I know how valuable those are. you want to think about getting a coach, or you want to think about a coaching program of some kind, or team coaching. If you're in a scenario where you have a team or a department that you think that would be really valuable for. Or maybe you know your technical skills need a brush up. And so you want to look at some of those, asynchronous self-paced programs that are on demand that can give you a wide variety of flexible options and tons of different topic areas. If you're part of an organization that you're thinking, okay, so I might know what skills I need, but how do I help my organization prepare? One of the things, again, because we're trying to think through the skills we need and the ways that we can get those skills, is maybe you want to look at building some kind of plan that puts all these pieces together, where you have a workshop session where you kick off, and maybe this is you're brainstorming goals, and you say, an organization or a unit maybe do we want? How do we want to show up for each other? What are the KPIs that we want to meet? How do we formulate those smart goals? And then you want to break off into your different teams or your units or departments, and you realize that you all have different needs for the skills that you need to develop. Maybe you have one team that really needs to develop some technical skills, and then you want to throw in some team coaching and another workshop for them. Or maybe you have a secondary team that needs team coaching, a little bit of some technical skill training, or some asynchronous training and a workshop, and then you want to do another team coaching session. But the nice thing is that, again, as we think about what kind of skills do we need, we can start to answer the question, well, how do we need to go about getting them? Um, so this is kind of one example of what a comprehensive program in your organization might look like. You might do something, this is very similar, but maybe you want to end with another workshop session, or maybe you want to have team coaching that goes all the way through, your entire kind of skill development program. So those are kind of two examples. I'm going to bring us back to this skills framework before we kind of enter into our discussion. So again, thinking through these technical skills, interpersonal mindset, kind of these human skills. I love that, I think it was Forbes number 5 said the, emotional intelligence, the human edge. I think it's really important as we think about technical skills, we also think about how do we continue in our skill development, in our learning, to embrace what makes us different as humans, but then also to share that with others. So that's kind of what we have for our skill development. We do have some time for some discussion. If you have any questions, if you want to unmute yourself, or if you want to share something in the chat, I'd love for you to drop something. Um, any questions or anything that I can answer, or things that you'd like to bring up for the benefit of the group, we'd love to take those now. Any thoughts? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brad, the pandemic really changed how we thought about learning skills. It was a very interesting time. And I think we haven't, I don't know that, I don't want to say recovered, but I think we're continuing to evolve in our understanding of what that looks like. Um, yeah, thank you so much. So just to let you all know, we are starting next year. We are going to launch a monthly series, and where we're going to focus on different industries, and we're going to have kind of some guest speakers come on. We're going to do some kind of it's a video podcast. And in January, we're going to kick it off with digital marketing. And so we're going to have some guests that will record this video podcast. And so if you would like to know or stay up to date with kind of this Aspire Advantage series and the skill conversation, we'll release those monthly. So if you want to follow us on our socials, that's where you can kind of stay up to date. We'll put all that information on there. And then if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'd love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also follow Aspire, our LinkedIn there as well. And if you want to contact us, we have our email on there, and then we have a landing page for this webinar if you want to get some more information. So yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit longer. I'd love to have some conversation. Thank you all so much for coming. How we should design a better college. Yes, no, there's so much to think about. And I could probably talk for a lot longer than you want to hear me on how do we think about what is education with all of this skill all the skill discussion in mind, and how do we create a scenario where we are still forming and shaping people through education in a way that truly prepares them for the world that they're going to be living in, and also when we don't really know what to expect. And so that is definitely part of it. But I'd love to have that conversation. It's a great thought. So thank you for that. Wonderful. Well, I will, again, I'll stick around if anybody wants to, um, ooh, College Unbound. Ooh, I'll have to check that out. That sounds interesting. Yes, thank you. Yes, oh, and Montessori. Yes, yeah, yep, yep. So I'll stick around if anybody wants to unmute or have some conversation. If not, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna click on this link right now. I'm gonna stop sharing though so that nobody has to see multiple of my screens, and I'll click on this so that I can save that for later. Thank you. Um, but yeah, I'll stick around if this is good for you. Feel free to hop off. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope this sparks some great conversation personally, but also professionally for you all. Thank you so much.